Inclusion. Inclusion. Sounds great. Let's all be included. We don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. We don't want to make anybody want to leave. We don't want anybody to feel unwelcome. That's inclusion. Let's include people. Let's not exclude people. What does that look like through a lens that understands the world only in terms of systemic power as related by critical theory, where truth doesn't matter? Anything that could be construed as offensive or uncomfortable to any member of a minoritized group, as they use the language to say, is not inclusive. That has to be stricken. So inclusion means speech codes. It means restricted speech. It means not racial sensitivity or sex sensitivity or any of these other kinds of sensitivity. It means a very extreme form in which anybody who could link the thing that was said or done to a system of power, upholding a system of power, has grounds to tell you that what you said or did was inappropriate and your intentions didn't matter. So it means severely restricted speech. It means a totalitarian environment in which the views that are considered right and authentic are the only acceptable ones unless you're asking questions to learn more. So says one of their theorists, Barbara Applebaum, in her 2010 book, Being White, Being Good. I maybe said that wrong. Maybe it's being good, being white. I do it every time. So I don't want to misquote that. It's one or the other. Flip a coin. She argues that the only legitimate way to disagree is to ask questions to understand better. What's another example, though, of something that might make somebody uncomfortable? Well, according to the critical theory that says that we live in a white supremacist hegemony, the presence of whiteness is everywhere, and this exacts a constant toll on the people of color who have to experience living as a person of color in an oppressive white supremacist society. So you have to set up all black spaces where that presence of whiteness isn't there. We call that segregation. They call it desegregation. George Orwell would be proud. Desegregation is segregation, or segregation is desegregation, however you want to have it. So you have to have segregated spaces to help people escape the permanence of the white male gaze. They sometimes phrase it that way. You have to give them safe spaces is the sort of friendly way to put, identity, single identity or mono identity spaces in which they don't have to have the oppression of being around people who their very presence reinforces the experience of hegemonic power. So the point of these critical theories then is to oversensitize people to language so that I might hear somebody say something and I think, an African American might not like that. And then that person's out. That person can't speak. That person has to be silenced. It doesn't matter if a single person ever was offended by it. A good example of that would be master bedrooms. Master bedrooms, we can't have master bedrooms anymore. We have realty businesses dropping the term master bedroom from their websites, from their listings. Why? Because somebody decided that this term, which was invented in a Sears catalog in the 1920s, obviously must refer to slavery, which it didn't. Therefore, it makes me uncomfortable, so we have to get rid of that. So we have to strike even language that, whether it corresponds to reality or not, we have to strike out language that somebody could find offensive, even in theory, as long as you have a critical theorist who's able to figure out that the racism, which must be present somewhere, can be found. Once it's found, it's out. So we have to do that to keep a space inclusive. These arbitrary, moving rules create a system in which everybody's afraid to speak all the time because they never know what the wrong thing is that's going to get them in trouble or fired or pilloried on social media, and that's called totalitarianism. And we have to segregate our spaces because social justice, obviously. That's inclusion. And if you don't understand this word in terms of the insane idea that everything boils down to these cartoonish power dynamics that had lots more truth in the past, but not even the degree of truth that they're speaking about now, and almost no truth now, if you don't accept that, you can't understand this. You hear inclusion and you translate it into something more reasonable. You hear diversity and you think, well, it is good to have different kinds of people around. It is good to have that different perspective. Here's this example of something bad that happened when we didn't. So diversity and inclusion install a totalitarian system of thought in which we have to hire the party to micromanage every single thing for us. It is a world in which adult human beings, to say nothing of children, cannot be possibly trusted to talk about identity-related issues or even be in the vicinity of one another across identities, and have to be micromanaged by administrative busybodies who love to go to bureaucratic meetings when you don't, and they can install the policy there. So that's diversity and inclusion.
The government can actually make the laws to racialize groups of people, to not allow them to come to this country. Now, what happened was bizarre, because according to the Good Friday Agreement, people born on the island of Ireland are still part of the Irish nation. So you have people born in the island of Ireland, they're part of the Irish nation, but they're not citizens. A bit strange, being part of the nation and not being citizen. Now, I've got Irish citizenship many years. Am I part of the Irish nation? I don't think so, but I have Irish citizenship for many years. So it's kind of weird, you know, not worked through to the end, but ultimately and unconsciously defending Irish white superiority without calling it, you know, a racial supremacy.
Okay, they continue. So let me cut that off. But so the context here was actually, let me back up. Did I miss it? No, here it is. Here it is. Professor Jenny Q on Twitter says, the panel that just labeled the Irish people white supremacists. These people are criminals pushing an agenda that needs to stop in its tracks now. The only racism displayed here is the racism in calling white or Irish people white supremacists.
Because you had a few questions and a few comments, Edmund?
Yeah, how's it going? Can you hear me there?
We can, yes.
Yeah, no, the racism that's been impacted against people of colour and migrants, I thought was just, it was awful, really, do you know what I mean? But I always want to point out that in this epidemic that we've been going through, it seems like elderly Irish people have suffered the most in the nursing homes, especially elderly Irish people. And since the most of those would be elderly white Irish, I think that they're the biggest demographic who would be impacted with COVID. Just wanted to get your thoughts in there, because I think we need to be taking account of all groups.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Thank you so much, Edmund.
Let's see.
Somebody from the panel wants to address that for us.
Okay.
Zoom. Oh, here she is again. Here we go.
Okay.
Yes, Edmund, you're absolutely right that older people and nurses have been hit hard. But the point is about the proportion in the population. And the point is also, what we need to do is change the system into a non-racist system. End direct provision, provide travelers with the proper accommodation. They've been asking for it for years. Provide migrant and undocumented workers with their full rights, because we need them, society needs them. And remember, it is all about equality, not about maintaining white supremacy. And what Ireland has been doing, and other white supremacy countries have been doing, is trying to keep some people down as racially apart and racially inferior, just in order to maintain white supremacy. I'm not talking about white privilege, I'm talking about white supremacy, which is far, far worse.
All right, good. And of course, these are the people that will be lecturing us when it's enough with equality, or when diversity is enough. As someone said, is this diversity? Is it a destination, or is it a journey? Right? Can it just keep going forever and forever? Is there ever enough, kind of thing? Wow, I didn't know about this lady before. So pretty interesting. It's also interesting to me that, like, even during like a pandemic, and despite we'll play some of these clips later too, by the way, world leaders talking about that this virus is it doesn't discriminate, it attacks anybody, and it doesn't see borders and all that kind of stuff. The elites always find some way of skewing it against white people, so that they will feel guilty for basically just existing, and somehow they're privileged in the situation, and somehow they need to give up more of their resources or give up more of their influence to make sure that they equalize this disparity, right?